acclaimed filmmakers. Witness documentaries to open your eyes. At this time on Al Jazeera.
Hello again, let's have a recap of our top stories. Southern Sudan has voted overwhelmingly to break away from the north. Official results confirm more than 98% of voters backed secession. But Africa's newest nation won't be formally created until July. The WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been in court in the UK, fighting extradition to Sweden, where he's wanted for questioning over claims of sexual assault. His defense lawyer claims that Assange could face the death penalty in the US if he is sent there on separate charges relating to his whistleblowing website. And protests are continuing across Egypt for a 15th day. There have been calls for another big march on Tuesday. All this as the country's government decided to award state employees a 15% hike in their salaries. Now, with the protests now stretching into a third week, there are worries in the pro-democracy camp that some fatigue might be setting in. So the protesters are doing all they can to keep their spirits up at the heart of the movement in Liberation Square. Shireen Tadros reports.
For years, he's been censored and silenced. Now, journalist Sharif Araf says he and his colleagues will tell the truth using their new paper called Liberation Square. And the protesters are hungry for it.
For the government, this is an illegal newspaper, but it gets its authority from the Egyptian people. I'm giving it out to people without money because they have paid with their lives for this freedom of the press.
The square has become a mini utopia in central Cairo. Political opinions aired, gender and sectarian divisions nowhere to be found. People feed and clothe each other here. Medical areas have been set up by doctors joining in with the protesters. The crime and sexual harassment so prevalent in the country seems absent in this square. So this is essentially the lost and found area, and people have been handing in all sorts of things, from ID cards that they found lying about to mobile phones, sunglasses. Some people have even come and handed in money and coins that they found just lying about. And it's all being protected by the protesters themselves, who have formed this human chain around this area to make sure nobody comes in and tries to take that's been found. But as the days drag on, tension grows. Organizers worried about infiltrators hostile to their cause are becoming increasingly suspicious of those coming in and those filming in the square.
We are preparing for everything and are afraid of anything that could spoil this revolution. People enter the square, but we don't know if they are with us or not. So we need to tighten the security.
Keeping the momentum going is key to this uprising. There are constant events to entertain and rally people. The more the government appears to be giving in to the demands of the protesters, the more ordinary Egyptians start to question the necessity of the sit-in. For those here, though, any change whilst Hosni Mubarak stays in power is cosmetic. And their message to the president is clear. Shireen Tadros, Al Jazeera, Cairo.
Well, Genevieve Abdo is an author who's written extensively about Egypt, and she joins me now from Washington, D.C. Thank you for being with us. The image today of the new cabinet sitting there with President Mubarak still in place and the award of a 15% pay rise to the civil service, all seemed like an attempt to pretend that life was going on as usual. Is it?
Well, I think that that's certainly the government's objective. And here in Washington, there has also been a bit of backsliding by the U.S. administration. I mean, as we saw over the weekend when Ambassador Wisner addressed the Munich Security Conference, he basically said that the United States believes that President Mubarak should stay in power through some sort of transitional period. And it does seem now that he was speaking a few days ahead of what we're now witnessing is Washington's position, which is that they don't necessarily believe, it seems, that President Mubarak should leave immediately, as the protesters are demanding.
Well, political interests and principles have never made very happy bedfellows, and in Washington's case, in this country, as in many others, they're having to balance the two. As you say, we've had two sides of that same argument. Do you think DC will eventually plump for the pragmatism of its broader interests in the Middle East, or pursue its principles in terms of trying to instill more democracy in Egypt here?
I think that what we're seeing is a very realistic and pragmatic President Obama. And what is feared by his administration and within the U.S. government is instability in Egypt. And so I think that what it seems that they're siding on, with prudence at this point. And they are at the same time continuing to publicly encourage a transition to a new government, but at the same time, it doesn't seem that we are where we were last week, where they're demanding that President Mubarak leave office. And I think the reason for that is that there's a lot of worry here in the United States of a new government dominated by the Muslim Brotherhood.
That may be the worry in the United States, but let's face it, this entire revolution was about the people that we're looking at right now, right there in Tahrir Square. They were the driving force behind this. A driving force that so many in Washington and around the Western world didn't even know existed. Are they going to sit still and allow Washington to just recreate Egypt in the same manner as before, sacrificing the interests of the people on the streets in the hope of more stability in the region?
No, I think that there's certainly an awareness that something fundamentally has changed in Egypt. We can't go back to the Egypt of early January. And so that's why the administration has been sort of caught off guard, because they were operating, as you say, in this sort of situation where they always believed that Mubarak was far better than any alternative, but the people don't agree. And so, if anything, the U.S. now is not only a lot less relevant than the country thought it was before now, but also they didn't have a plan B. So I think that's why, at least, we're seeing a lot of confusion. And at the same time, as you mentioned, this is a country which is always advocating democracy in the Middle East in particular. But when push comes to shove, it seems that they're a lot more reluctant to immediately move on this option.
All right, Genevieve Abdo in Washington, thanks for talking to us. Now, Tunisia's parliament has passed an emergency powers for the interim president. This, as the main ruling party, the RCD, was suspended from all political activity. Nazanin Moshiri reports.
Democracy Tunisian style. Protesters try to stop politicians entering parliament. They're activists and lawyers who suffered under Ben Ali. And now they want this institution dissolved and the old faces of the regime out.
These nominated member of parliament are part of this regime, and we do not like them, and we do not accept them.
And inside Tunisia's parliament, scenes this country could only have dreamt of. Opposition politicians vent their anger at the RCD. The former ruling party was suspended on Sunday, but their members of parliament have retained their seats for now at least. And there were more big changes. An emergency vote was passed which gives extra powers to the interim president. So crucially, an election date can now be decided. Tunisia's Prime Minister told me it's an important step.
We will be able to fulfill our responsibilities, engage in a democratic path, and ensure human rights and fundamental liberties, as well as move our country forward.
What the Prime Minister, Mohamed Ghannouchi, is trying to do is unite Parliament and also the country behind this interim government. He says it's the only way not only to solve the economic situation, but also to bring back security to the streets. There's still frustration here. These protesters blame the police for the deaths of 3 demonstrators in the past few days. Weeks on from the Jasmine Revolution that brought about a dictator's downfall, violence and tension still remain. Nazanin Moshiri, Al Jazeera, Tunis.
France's foreign minister is facing calls to resign after she took a holiday in Tunisia during the country's uprising. Michelle Alliot-Marie has said she regrets taking the holiday in December, and she's also admitted that she did use a Tunisian businessman's private jet several times during her stay, but she is refusing to stand down. Now, there are reports just coming in that an Islamist rebel leader is claiming that he ordered the suicide bomb